hour. Max Olson from ESPN joins us as we are in Studio 365 Sports, just a little bit west of McLean Stadium off I-35 in Waco. Max Olson, thank you, Max. Appreciate your time. So much is going on. We'll let you choose which topic. The transfer portal is not empty because there's like 4,000 kids in there, but maybe the best players available. The presidential commission and or the House versus NCAA settlement that never seems to ever end.
Let me give you my thoughts on the NBA playoffs first. How about that?
Man, the Knicks are leading the Boston Celtics 2-0 right now, which is shocking.
How about that?
Yep.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. Isn't it just a crazy time? I mean, I feel like we've probably been saying this for a few years now, but isn't this just a crazy time to follow and cover this sport?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'd love for it to chill out at some point, maybe
Okay.
that'll happen. And obviously I think that is the overarching theme here is people trying to figure out how to establish some control and some consistency with this stuff.
Max, here's how weird it is. The President of the United States gives the commencement address at a big football school. Their legendary coach whispers in his ear that we need to do something about college football. And then all of a sudden there's a commission. Like, this is a weird timeline. It's very weird. Like, that would never happen in any other era, ever.
Yeah. And I don't, it's interesting. I think you've heard post-retirement, like I think you've heard Nick Saban sort of express some of his concerns about college athletics now that he's out of it. Certainly Cody Campbell has written pieces like laying out how he feels about all this stuff. I think he's been pretty transparent and trying to be like constructive in terms of talking about this stuff. But ultimately, like when you put that group together, what is the real like agenda there, and what do they look to accomplish? I think is a pretty interesting question mark.
Max, how about the rise of Cody Campbell? I mean, I don't know when we first started mentioning his name. I guess a couple portal cycles ago, but my goodness, I mean, the hits don't stop for Texas Tech, do they? I mean, between this recruiting class and now, I mean, at worst, you got a guy who's influential enough to be named co-chair of this commission along with Nick Saban of all people as the first couple of names announced. I mean, what a breath of fresh air and just a large amount of influence he's gathered in what seems like a short time, but maybe isn't as short as I realize.
Yeah, I mean, even like it's the accomplishments are so stacked up this year that like it probably kind of slipped under the radar like a couple weeks ago that like, oh yeah, Cody's now the chair of the board of regents at Texas Tech now too. So yeah, he's certainly got an extreme amount of influence and involvement over at Texas Tech, and there's not just the football program though. I think that part of why like he brings some perspective to all this stuff is because he's done this at the ground level in terms of running a collective, and so he understands what this is like dealing with agents, what it's like dealing with sports beyond football, and the importance of trying to maintain those sports. And I like I said, very interested to see. Obviously, we're at the very beginning stages here of even putting something together, but how that concept collides with the House settlement, I think is a pretty fascinating thing here, because I think everybody right now is just trying to get the House settlement to the finish line. But the reality is, as soon as that's sort of codified, I think that is going to face legal challenges.
Max, Jake Trotter, we've known Jake a long time. He got away from college football for a while to go cover the NFL, I guess if you want to consider the Browns the NFL. But he has now written an article about the trend, the rise of the general manager. And we have discussed this at times, but anything in particular you saw from what he wrote, and just your thought about, we had a question yesterday, is this a trend for now or is this the future?
Yeah, Jake and I put this piece together about just how the evolution of the GM position this offseason. And, I think the thing that was really eye-opening, you see some of those stories of like James Blanchard being pursued by Notre Dame, or USC hires the GM away from Notre Dame, or some of the moves that have been made. But I think that, certainly this offseason, as this becomes more professionalized, you are seeing Jim Nagy go over at Oklahoma. You're seeing Mike Lombardi at North Carolina. You're seeing guys with NFL backgrounds enter into this world and doing so at some of the highest salaries that the GM's ever been paid. And I think there's a lot of intrigue there for the longtime folks who've been DPPs or recruiting coordinators or whatever the titles have been in the past who've now taken on these GM titles. You've got a little bit of you've got the folks coming in from the pros who kind of like they have the experience of dealing with cap and contracts and some of these elements that are just brand new to the sport. But they also don't know maybe some of the old school recruiting stuff that people have been doing forever. And so, I think that helps to have some of these folks that are raising the bar in terms of pay and responsibilities. But I think for everybody else, the folks who've been doing this a long time, it's a real challenge right now to kind of figure out, hey, how do we get ahead of this stuff? How do we get good at writing out contracts and negotiating with agents and managing this house settlement cap? And I think that those folks in the past have been paid like tight ends coaches, but I think the importance that they're taking on in the organization now is up there with the coordinators. I really do. And I think that that's just going to continue to trend in that direction where these guys are not behind the scenes players. They are people who are like in the NFL right there with the head coach.
Do you think that it looks like an NFL GM and that position coaches start to look more like professional coaches in that the part of the recruiting will not be so much on them anymore? It'll be up to the GM and his scouts, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that's probably a pretty logical future for college football. Is that these assistant coaches who are just getting burned out? Like, why are we sending them on the road to go visit high schools and do all the recruiting on the ground? In the spring or in December or stuff like that. I think like the future probably is that recruiting staffs get to hit the road, kind of like the NFL, where you have scouts that go to high schools, and that's not allowed currently by the NCAA. But I think that's probably you talk to GMs and DPPs around the country. That's something they've been pushing for years. They would love to see that their personnel being able to go on the road and really kind of take on those responsibilities from the assistant coach. And you remember, like we're not too long ago that one of the assistant coaches on the staff just had the recruiting coordinator title and helped organize stuff. But certainly now this is just way more complicated, and you really need all hands on deck now.
What do you think about Texas and Texas A&M moving back to Black Friday?
As someone who traveled to College Station last year, I don't love it because I'd love to spend Thanksgiving with my family.
Yeah.
But for us out-of-state folks, tough to travel the day of probably. But I think that's like that first game back in Austin, since the rivalry has been resumed, is going to be incredible. And I would imagine, I think A&M's been setting up to be pretty good again this year. So I would imagine that game could have the kind of stakes that we had last year, where truly, like, if you lose this game, you don't get to go to the SEC title game. Like, I think A&M could at least be playing spoiler in this game this year, because I think this Texas team has got a chance to get back to Atlanta. But going to be an incredible game. Wish it was Saturday, personally.
No, I think a lot of people do. The tradition, I guess everyone will get used to it. But having to travel on Thanksgiving to get to a game from out of state, that's going to be a pain. Max, we had Cole Kublik on yesterday, SEC Network at ESPN. He does a great job. Really great analyst in many ways. I asked him about how deep is the pool in the SEC that can actually take Georgia or Texas out. And, obviously there's a handful, but how big is that handful, do you think, when it comes to who is good enough to take care of them if they needed to? Not once in a week or an upset, but in a championship game and get there.
Yeah, you're talking about for 25, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a great question, and this is a project we've been working on of like trying to, like, now that the dust is settled with the portal, just sort of try to look at who's had the best off season out there. And I certainly think LSU has done a lot. LSU, like Texas Tech, has made a big push, a big investment this offseason to be a playoff team. I think just like Ole Miss a year ago, it's definitely a playoff or bust kind of year for LSU. I think Auburn has to love the direction they're pointing in from a roster standpoint. I think they've had an extremely good offseason. Now, will Jackson Arnold or Deuce Knight at quarterback be the guy that puts it over the top? We'll see. They've still got a lot of sophomore talent that probably needs to keep growing up, but I think Auburn is getting closer. I don't think that A&M is going to fall off much. I think they had a good offseason. I'm sure I'm blanking on some. I mean, Tennessee, I think you would expect to take a little bit of a step back after, everything that transpired a month ago. But I still think there's, I think the expectations are going to be extremely high for South Carolina. I think they're going to be high for Florida just because of the quarterbacks and the young talent they have returning. I think they're, people sort of, you heard some of the shade a little bit last year about like, oh, Texas just really didn't play that hard of a schedule in year one. Like, I do think this is going to be a tough schedule for the Longhorns, just because I think there are a lot of teams that can hang with the top quarter of the SEC this year.
Max, you mentioned A&M playing spoiler at the end of the year for Texas a little bit. How much of their success last year was, I asked Cole this too, I'm curious your opinion on it, was due to the fact that they kind of caught a nice little schedule run in the middle where some of the teams that you thought would have been better were a little bit down, and how much of it was Mike Elko genuinely improved this team?
You're talking about A&M catching an easier schedule or Texas catching an easier
A&M catching it?
Oh, no, I think Mike Elko did a pretty impressive job, especially with some of the players that walked out the door when he got there, like the Walter Nolans and Evan Stewarts of the world. Like, I think they did a really nice job of taking what they had and maximizing it. And I think he kind of knew, like, post Jimbo Fisher, that like Mike Elko had a chance to kind of come in and just kind of get things back to routine around there, and that like kind of just getting things back to normal would almost yield like pretty big results. The quarterback situation obviously was like pretty funky last year, and they're moving forward with Marcel Reed, but I don't know that certainly the Wegman piece didn't play out the way they thought, but I thought he did a really good job, and I don't know that it would be, I don't know how much I'd attribute that to schedule. I just think that staff coached them up really well, and I think they've recruited at a solid level, and I just think that that's a program that, when you can do it right over there, you're going to be in the conversation every year.
How much has your time and what you do, and you've written about a lot of things, and now the general manager piece with Jake Trotter, how much of what you do now and compared to just talking or covering or analyzing or writing about college football, the games, the athletes, et cetera, is now outside of that and more what is happening in the game that's changed so much?
It's a good question. Like when I like talk to like journalism classes and stuff, like you kind of like realize as you're talking about the job with them, like, and I'm sure you guys probably feel this way too, with just your day-to-day routine. Like going to football games and covering football games is a very tiny sliver of the pie of our year and of our job. You know what I mean? I think it's certainly in my job, you are covering the off season as hard as you're covering the season. And so, I think it's a big piece of it. The last few years, really, I don't know, probably since COVID, wouldn't you say? Probably once COVID hit and just all the policy around that stuff. And then you go right into NIL after that. I think in conference realignment, obviously just a completely dominant storyline. I just think all the off-field stuff around college football has really kind of dominated the headlines. And I'm sure some fans get kind of sick of that and just want to focus on the games and stuff. But it has also made this a 12-month sport where we can talk about this, every Thursday. There's always a bunch of different things to talk about with college football.
Max, do you think that if you, me, Sam Khan, Craig, Smokey can be in charge of cooking because he won't be able to sit in the meetings all that very long. He doesn't like meetings all that much, and like pick a couple other like rider buddies that you like. If we all got in a room for like 4 hours with some pizza and beer, that we could just give the Presidential Commission collective bargaining, regional conferences for non-revenue sports. Where's our check? Like, don't you think we could get that done faster?
I think that in the spirit of how all this stuff goes, I think we get together and we just come up with a list of the ways things should be. Mm-hmm. We don't have to actually lay out the plan of here's how you get it done. Here's how we get there. I just think we all have very strong opinions on what this is supposed to be. And let's just focus our efforts there. I mean, we've all got takes on that, but I don't have solutions, obviously. Right. If I had solutions, then I'd be a consultant.
Max, here's the thing. In media, as you know, there are differing opinions and arguments about everything. I think those of us that cover college athletics, for the most part, because we have to do so much work on it, kind of know, at least not the solutions, but we know what the, like where the end goal should be. And we all kind of agree on it to the most part, which is pretty rare in today's world.
And wouldn't you say, like, over the past few years, I think the majority of people have probably come around to, like, yeah, these guys should be getting paid.
Yeah.
Like, I don't maybe love some of the things that are occurring on the open market, but, like, even some of that stuff, or there should be a playoff, like some of the things that we used to argue about, like, now that you get there, people adjust to it.
Yeah, and look, here's the thing. They're worried about some of the things that go, but you could pick any profession and be like, well, here's the shady part of, being a janitor. Like I picked a warrant.
The underbelly of the janitor world. Yeah,
here's where you can do some things. In the wide world of coding. Like it's just there could be anything like that. This one's just one that people pay attention to.
What made you bring up janitor?
I don't know. It was the first job that came to my mind. I don't know.
Thank you,
Paul's
Max.
just always had an implicit suspicion of janitors, I guess.
Yeah, look, I'm just a boy with a dream.
Yeah.
Thank
you, Max. It's an ender, as Chan Gailey used to say at the end of Cowboys press conferences when somebody asked a question that made no sense. Yeah, that's an ender.